This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you. And boy, we've got a lot to talk about. There's actually Republican donors who are telling Republican members of the Senate, you don't give us this tax cut, which is all this health care bill is. You don't give us this, I mean, literally, it's a $33 billion tax cut just for the 400 richest Americans. Now, if the difference between a 20% capital gains rate and a 23.8% capital gains rate equals $33 billion over a decade, these guys are making some serious money. In the meantime, the Supreme Court has ruled that nothing wrong with the government, state governments giving money to churches, so long as it's for a playground, for recycling toxic waste. Shredded tires, which are toxic waste. That's a great new way to get rid of an item that they used to actually have to pay because they were too toxic for landfills. Remember that? You had to pay to get rid of tires. Now they just stick them out there with the kids. Anyhow, so that's what they did. And Austin Petersen is on the line with us, former Libertarian Candidate for President, Facebook.com/producer Petersen, Petersen. You can tweet him at AP4LP. Austin, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tom. Nice to see you.
Back at you. So you said that, if I'm correctly quoting you, it's ridiculous to deny this church access to this program as if it was some sort of question whether the funds would be used to promote religion. They're not. Is that your position on this?
Right. It's kind of a lose-lose situation because the true answer is that the government shouldn't be giving this money to anybody whatsoever if I had my druthers. But it relies on the interpretation of the 14th Amendment, right? How broad do we interpret the 14th Amendment? As liberals who believe in things like gay marriage, for example, we praise the court when it passed Obergefell, for example, and they used the 14th Amendment for that. But they also used it for this situation, which claims, of course, religious discrimination in terms of the question of whether the privileges and immunities should be laid out equally. So if we rely on that broad interpretation for things like gay marriage, then I think it has to be applied if it's to be applied consistently.
I thought this was about the establishment clause in the First Amendment, that Congress shall have established no religion for the country and shall not support any religion. But well, okay. So you're saying that because the money is going to the church, and the church is then using that money to pave their parking lot with toxic shredded tires, then that's an okay use of it. Isn't that the opposite, or the inversion of the Republican argument against money going to Planned Parenthood? Planned Parenthood, a small percentage of their funds are used for abortions, and so the Republicans are saying, no, we can't send any money to Planned Parenthood at all because some of that money might pay for the common expenses. The bookkeeper, for example, who also keeps track of the abortions. And so you can't give any money to them. How can you, money is fungible. How can you say that this money's only going to the playground? Maybe the church has plenty of money for the playground. They're going to use this money for, I don't know, a bonus for the preacher.
Hey, that's why I call myself a small libertarian in that sense. I completely agree with you, Tom. I mean, the money should definitely not be going to anybody. They shouldn't be sending this money out to any of these nonprofits at all whatsoever because, to me, I think that, you never know where the money's going to go.
No, I get it. You don't want money going to public schools. I know that, and we've had that conversation before. And this is a private school, but the money was available just to the public schools in the state. And now the Supreme Court has said no, you can give it to religious schools as well. What? Well, are you saying that we don't have a disagreement here? I mean, is this the?
I'm saying we don't have a disagreement. Tom, for the first time in probably our 5 or 6 years of sparring back and forth, it seems like we don't have a disagreement. I mean, really the question is the establishment of religion, right? You're talking about established religion. If we were to go back to American history, you remember the Constitution was only meant to apply to the federal government. It was never necessarily meant to mean that the states couldn't do this kind of thing. And the Missouri Constitution actually states very clearly that the money that state money is not supposed to go to religious institutions, which is why this got kicked up.
Along with 29 other states, and this goes back to Massachusetts. When Massachusetts was about to enter the Union in 1789, the guys doing the ratifying conventions, particularly Virginia, came right out and said, Massachusetts, we will not allow Massachusetts to enter the Union as long as they continue their taxpayer support for churches. In Massachusetts, you had to pay a tax to the government that was then passed along to the churches on a weekly basis. I mean, it might have been collected monthly. I'm not sure the details of it, but basically it was passed along to the churches as essentially your tithe. And if you didn't show up in church, the state, the police, paid for by the state, would go to your home and to either put you in the stocks or take you to church. And you know, everybody else in this country, the other 12 states said, you know, that's not America. That's not what we envision. That's not what the Establishment Clause says. That's not what the First Amendment says. Massachusetts, you have to change your laws if you're going to join the Union. And Massachusetts had a huge internal debate about that. I mean, it was a fascinating little piece of American history, that year 1789. And they ultimately decided, okay, we'll do away with the Puritan laws in exchange for membership in the United States. But, you know, this is like bringing back the Puritan laws.
And so, in a way, yeah, I think, you know, I've read your books, Tom. I mean, almost nobody knows more about this history than you do. So I would definitely defer to your knowledge on this. But I'll just say that, you know, when we started to get away from the concepts of federalism and we started to lean more on, like, the federal government supremacy clause, for example, with the passage of the 14th Amendment, we certainly got away from the sort of vision of the founders as it was originally intended.
Right. The 14th Amendment ended slavery, and most of the founders were slaveholders.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, you know, it gave equal protection to everybody, not just white people. But anyhow,
right. Which is why we've had things like civil rights acts, which, you know, were definitely needed in order for us to have a restoration of what the true vision was. I mean, you know for a fact that while, you know, people like Jefferson and may have held slaves, you know, they called for the abolition of slavery during the
Jefferson did. Patrick Henry did. Patrick Henry, Andrew Jackson, another major slaveholder, you know, would go to his grave fighting for slavery.
There were abolitionists.
Yeah, Adams was not a slaveholder. Yeah, Austin Petersen. Thank you, Austin.
Thanks, Tom.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be back with more of the news of the day. There's a pile of it right after this.